Good morning, NRI Samay listeners. Welcome to NRI Samay weekend shows. Like every weekend, this weekend is also no exception in bringing unheard stories or today we have Sarangi from Bhopal, who has been relentlessly pursuing justice for Bhopal gas victims, which happened almost 29 years back on the night of December 2nd and December 3rd in 1984. And with today's host, Akshay from Florida. Welcome to NRI Samay, Satnatji.
Hello, hi. Thank you for getting me into this. Yep.
So, Satyanaraj, actually give a brief background about this tragedy that happened on the night of December 2nd in 1984. So, what exactly happened on that night in this Bhopal gas tragedy?
See, Bhopal is the capital city of Madhya Pradesh, and it's not a very big city. So, on the northern end of the city, the Union Carbide Corporation USA used to run a factory to manufacture pesticides. This factory was set up in 1969, and essentially they were hoping to sell a lot of pesticides for particularly the cotton producers. And this factory was also producing methyl isocyanate to produce carbamate-based pesticides. And right from the beginning, when they made the proposal for the factory, the American managers of Union Carbide Corporation had actually under-designed the factory, and it was much, much more unsafe compared to the MIC plant, methyl isocyanate plant in Institute, West Virginia. And the under-designing, the unsafe designing was done with one purpose. It was to reduce the cost of erection of the plant, construction of the plant. So there were many changes. If you see the design differences between the US plant and the Indian plant, the construction material was mild steel in India, whereas it's stainless steel in Institute, West Virginia. And there were several other design differences. And on top of design differences, they were also going through an economy drive that started in 1980. And as part of the economy drive, one of the vital safety systems that was the refrigeration unit, because if methyl isocyanate is kept at sub-zero temperature, as is stipulated by Union Carbide's own manual, then the reaction kinetics are much slower. But as part of the economy drive, the refrigeration unit was closed down in 1982, and this was done to save something like $70 a day. So as a result of all these cost-cutting plus the hazardous designing of the plant, on the night of 2nd, 3rd December, during routine maintenance operation, water entered the tank that contained methyl isocyanate. And one of the vital differences between the American plant and the Bhopal plant was the tanks here were much, much bigger. So once water entered, then the water started reacting with MIC, and this is an exothermic reaction and leading to generation of a lot of heat, and the reaction got faster because of that. And as a result of what happened was it went out of control. It became a runaway reaction, and the pressure built up, and the valve ruptured, and methyl isocyanate gas leaked from about 100 feet, a little after midnight, but from a 100 feet high vent. And this gas then was carried by a gentle wind that was flowing towards the south, and that's where the city lay. So all this methyl isocyanate gas mixed with moisture and formed an aerosol cloud-like thing. And these clouds, these poison clouds, descended onto the nearby residential areas and it moved like a 30-foot wall. It moved through the city, and before people knew, because there was no other warning, before people knew, they were already surrounded by these poison clouds. And there was no one telling them what to do in these cases. They could have saved themselves if they ran in the opposite direction of the wind. They could have protected themselves if they put a wet cloth over their nose and mouth. But the company had never told them anything like that, and there were no other arrangements for these kind of information. So people essentially, an overwhelming majority of the people ran in the direction of the wind because the hospital was in that direction. So in running towards, so there were hundreds of thousands of people running on the streets, and there was stampede, and in that chaos, people ran through the poison clouds, inhaling more and more of the toxic gas. And because it's a pulmonary irritant. When it hits your lungs or your eyes, a lot of water comes out, and that's what happened. That most of the people who died that night, and it is estimated that some 8,000 people died. Most of the people who died because their lungs were filled with their own body fluids as a reaction to the pungent gases. And so the streets were littered with dead bodies of people and human and animals, and when they reached the hospital, the doctors didn't know how to deal with it because they had never known of this gas. They didn't even know the name of the gas, and they didn't know how to treat. So when the doctors called the plant medical officer, he did what he was told to do by the management. He downplayed the catastrophe. He said the gas is nothing. It's just like a potent tear gas. You wash with water and it'll go. He advised the doctors in the government hospital. And of course, the government hospital doctors knew that water wasn't going to do anything because there were hundreds of people dying right at the doorstep of the hospital. And so, the situation is not very different today. People are still dying. The composition of the gas is still unknown. The health effects of the chemical is still being kept a trade secret by the American corporation. They are still not giving us the information that we need to treat people. So even today, in many ways, the situation is no better. The added thing is now we find that the next generation is also marked by carbides poisons. And now we know that it's not just the gas, but it's also the groundwater around the factory, which is now abandoned. And that groundwater is contaminated with extremely toxic chemicals that cause cancers and cause birth defects. So we have another disaster that is ongoing, and that's because of chronic poisoning through contaminated groundwater that are contaminated because of recklessly dumped hazardous wastes from that factory.
Oh, so it has like two more disasters in making, right? So one is essentially how the survivors are doing. Are they still under the trauma, or are they still surviving with that effect of that the effect of that post-Bhopal gas tragedy? How is their health condition? Because there are around lakhs of people who were exposed to that methyl isocyanate. And how are they doing?
Yeah. So according to the official figures, there are about little over 570,000 people who have been exposed to the poison clouds from Indian carbide. And of them, exact figures are not there, but estimated that between 120 and 150,000 people are today battling chronic illnesses, which are a direct consequence of their toxic exposure. Now, in addition to this, you have tens of thousands of children who have growth retardation, and if they're girl children, they have problems of the reproductive system. Their menstrual cycles are irregular, and this is what research has shown. But apart from that, many of them also have eye problems, breathing problems, and in addition to that, we have had in the last 10 years or so have seen a rise of different kinds of cancers among the exposed people. So, and in the clinic in which I work, we also see too many people with diabetes and hypertension and thyroid-related problems. This is among the gas-exposed people. And among the people who have been chronically exposed to contaminated groundwater, which is about 50,000 people, we see problems of liver and kidneys and lungs and brain, and we see a lot of skin problems. We find too many children in this community that are born with horrific birth defects. So it's a pretty depressing situation even today.
Are they still getting exposed to that contaminated groundwater even today? I mean to say, like, are the new people are also getting exposed to it? Our government tried to, stop that disaster in making?
The most important thing that had to happen was people had to be given clean drinking water supply. And we did get an order on this from the Supreme Court of India as far back as in 2004. In 2004, the Supreme Court directed that 14 communities should be supplied with clean drinking water because they were next to the factory and their water was contaminated. But unfortunately, it has taken 9 years for the state government to follow that decision. And even today, because we have been monitoring the situation on the ground, even today there are about 1,000 families that are forced to drink the contaminated groundwater. And it was not like there was no money. In fact, the central government, after we met the Prime Minister, the central government sanctioned the money. And there was 14 crore, little more than 14 crores of rupees that the central government had given to the state government back in 2006. And yet it took 7 years for the state government to actually use that money. So, I mean, we see a situation in which, like people are just being left to be poisoned and to their fate.
So it's more like, and we have the money, and only the problem is the intention of the government to do something for the people. Right? It's more on those lines. The money is.
Pardon?
So money is not an issue. The money was allotted. We have everything ready. It is those government officials, the government has to take one more step in implementing the idea or showing their intention to serve the people. Is that what it is?
Exactly. It's a combination of things. It's like there's a lot of money that has gone into building hospitals, but the crucial thing, that is line of treatment, is still not known. So, what's happening is there's a lot of money, so they buy a lot of medicines. Of course, a lot of these medicines are spurious drugs or from low-quality stuff. But also, what is happening is there is indiscriminate prescription of antibiotics and steroids and painkillers and psychotropic drugs, which are symptomatic treatment, but without what standardized treatment protocols. So what's happening is if people only get temporary relief, if at all, and the problems remain. and also many times they are being over-medicated.
So, I mean, actually, in the very first place, this is not supposed to happen. So this is a mistake of either Union Carbide or the other people. So did these people get any compensation, or were they compensated properly for the disaster of someone else's mistake?
No, the compensation was very, very paltry. I mean, to give you an idea, 94% of the people who were exposed received only $500 for injuries that would be there for whole life. Because, as I said, there were 120 to 150,000 people were chronically ill, but even rest of the 500,000 people, I mean, they have many damages like diminished vision or diminished lung capacity. That's there to stay, and all that 93% of people have gotten is $500
for the entire life, basically, one settlement.
Exactly, and this doesn't even take care of their healthcare bills for 5 years. And if you compare it to and for deaths, Union Carbide gave only $2,000. And essentially, because nothing about the chemical was known to the Indian government. Even today it's not known because all the information was with Union Carbide. We now have documents that show that it was Union Carbide officials who told the Indian government what kind of money they could expect. And in that they said that there would be people who would have only temporary injury, who just have to visit hospital for one day. But the fact is, Union Carbide's own document on the chemical says that methyl isocyanate will cause residual injuries even if prompt treatment is carried out. So, and yet they put 93% people as temporarily injured and paid them only $500.
So what could have, did not we get any legal support from the courts of the law or the government to get what we are supposed to get in terms of compensate or in terms of service we were supposed to get from the Union Carbide? How was the legal approach?
Yeah. See, what happened was that the Indian government, there was an act passed in the parliament right after the disaster called the Bhopal Act. And through this act, the government said that we will fight for the victims. We will represent them. And the victims do not have any right to fight the corporation. And after the government took over the rights of the people, it betrayed the people by settling with Union Carbide at a very small amount. Like I was saying, like settling with Union Carbide at an amount that gave only $500 to the injured and $2,000 to families of the dead. So this settlement is still seen as a complete Indian government's complete succumbing to pressure from an American corporation and American government.
For a legal battle, because all their legal rights were given to the government of India, and now
and in fact that happened. That the reason the government the reason the government presented when they passed that act was because within 10 days of the disaster, Bhopal was become a ground where American private lawyers were descending in hordes. And they were coming and they were promising millions of dollars to the people, and many of them were carrying away original documents, So there was complete chaos. We had American private lawyers in huge numbers coming, and they would get people to sign on retainers that were written in English, and these would say that 40% of whatever we get would go to the lawyer. And people just signed them without knowing.
Yeah.
So then the government passed this act.
Okay. Okay, so it is okay. So it was a really good intention of government to actually protect the rights of the people. So they actually took over the rights. But after that, they failed to live up to the expectation, or they failed to do something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what kind of it is 29 years that this incident happened. So still, like, what kind of what we are expecting from either from the Union Carbide, now it is taken over by Dow, or government of India?
Yeah.
What still we need to get from them?
See, we are basically, another major party in this, I have not mentioned so far, and it is the U.S. government, because you look at the documents and you know that the U.S. government, through the Exim Bank, actually financed the construction of this factory that was badly designed. And even today, it is the U.S. government that can easily ask these American corporations, Dow Chemical or Union Carbide, to go face the ongoing trial in India or go clean up the Bhopal contamination, which is spreading, in fact. So I think you have to also look at the responsibility and the potential role that U.S. government could play. So given all that, we expect that all of these major actors, the U.S. government, Dow Chemical, Union Carbide, Indian government, state of Madhya Pradesh, they at least decide that they would like to bring a closure to this ongoing disaster. It doesn't have to be like that. So we think it is possible to stop the disaster, but it is only possible through the cooperation of these major actors.
So, not only the government and these private companies. So what kind of support that you are expecting from the concerned citizens in India and the people living in abroad? Because I have been following this very closely, and you have been getting a lot of good support from international sectors too. Yeah. So what kind of support that you are expecting and getting?
We are saying that on a few things, like we are saying that if enough people bring pressure on Dow Chemical to say that you must clean up that place, you must clean up the contamination caused by your subsidiary. So one big thing they could do is to clean up Bhopal without further delays, because the worry is, in 2004, there were 14 communities that were contaminated. And now in 2013, the number has gone to 22. And they're just spreading. So that's number one. The second thing we are saying, and this Carbide should have done long back, is to provide us with the medical information on what these chemicals do to the body or to the next generation, and how you can mitigate these effects. So it's a very simple request, and it doesn't cost money. It just means handing over information. And what we are saying is that the government has finally realized that it has asked for too little money as compensation. So there's a curative petition for additional compensation from Dow Chemical and Union Carbide that the government of India has filed. So we are asking the corporations to respond to this, to actually look at what the government is saying, and whether there isn't a very solid basis for them to pay additional compensation. And lastly, but importantly, the U.S. government has to send Warren Anderson and Union Carbide Corporation's representatives to face trial on this, because they are charged with quite serious criminal offenses, and they claim that they are not to be blamed, but that claim has to be tested in a court of law, and for that, the United States government and the Departments of State and Justice have to extradite Warren Anderson and representatives of Union Carbide Corporation. That's not happening.
So, and for that, we need to have kind of an international pressure on either on U.S. government or on Dow Chemicals. That's a much bigger action, right? So,
exactly, yes.
We heard that a few students from Harvard University, they have started the 365-day relay fast, in protest of Dow Chemicals, or for this benefit or for the help for victims of Bhopal gas tragedy. So, how the people, are you in touch with them, or is it how they're coordinating, and is there any way that any other people can join in their relay fast?
Yeah, they had actually talked with us before they started this action. We think it's a fantastic action. When we told this to our organization members and other people, other survivors of the disaster, they just didn't know what to say. They were full of admiration for this courageous step, and they were saying, these are our brothers and sisters who are helping us in this, and this is amazing. And we think it's a fantastic action, because it just isn't a day, it's going on for every day, and you need a lot of support to actually sustain this. And so far they have done very, very well. So I think what they would need, and for this has to grow, in fact, this more and more people have to join. And for that, I would, and on behalf of the survivors of Bhopal, I would appeal to everyone who's listening to NRI Samay and of course other NRI organizations, to please get into this, because this is something that has a lot of power. This is something that is Gandhi's words in action. It just shows the power of this kind of satyagraha, and this should inspire a lot of people. And I request you, I urge you to please do all you can to spread the word on this and get people to join and fast for a day, and get their friends to fast for a day, and their family.
Sure, Satyanathji. As you have been mentioning, it's really a long battle for 29 years, and we haven't, our Dow Chemicals haven't done much, and it is still spreading. And now the 22 communities have affected with this contamination. And as NRIs, we try to put pressure on the U.S. government or Dow Chemicals to clean up the things in the first place. We'll try to extend our support, and we try to get involved in as much as we can. And thanks a lot for spending your valuable time with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
And informing us all about, the good incident that happened. And we really appreciate for your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. When we were discussing with Satyanathji from Bhopal, we heard about a 365 days relay fast that is happening in US, and it's more like a global event. So we were really surprised to see the commitment of the people, the commitment of NRIs living outside India. So can you actually explain us a little more about what you people are doing for the justice of the Bhopal victims?
Okay, I can take this, and then maybe Pooja can also chime in.
Yes.
So specifically, I'll speak specifically about the fast, and then what we are doing to support the victims. So the fast, as an idea, it originated, at Harvard University during the screening by the students, and ICJB was part of that discussions. One of the main reasons we felt that we need to really take a strong position on this was that a lot of people think that the disaster happened 29 years ago, and people know it and they think it's finished. But the central issue with Bhopal is that the disaster is ongoing. The site has not been cleaned up, and the contamination from the site, which were all the toxins were left on the factory and in evaporation ponds, and they have leached into the soil, and they found their way into the groundwater, and a large community around the factory has been affected by this pollution, and no one has really done anything until the campaign took it up. So, for example, there was many health effects of this pollution, including very high rates of cancers, birth defects among children, second generation, and even now there's people continuing to be exposed, like young women, children. There've been issues with maternal health, young women's menstrual cycles, and so on. And these have been documented in American medical journals. Journal of the American Medical Association has done a study on it. So it's well documented. So in spite of this, there has been some kind of deadlock between the government's inability to provide any kind of relief and rehabilitation to the survivors, and no real political will to clean up the situation on the ground. And they have been very lax in even prosecuting the company Dow Chemicals, which has a lot of support from the U.S. State Department. For example, in the WikiLeaks revelations, it was shown that the U.S. State Department was emailing Montek Singh Ahluwalia saying that we are hearing too much noise about Dow. It will have a chilling effect on our relationship, financial relationships. So in this kind of pressure, the survivors are continuing to be affected on a daily basis. Children are being exposed, children are being born with birth defects. So it's very shocking that this issue is not receiving more attention. And given that it is the 30th year, we felt that there needs to be really a strong stance taken by, as Indians who are living abroad, and we feel that every Indian also should be made aware of this situation and try to find a solution. So one way to do it is raise awareness and create pressure globally so that the government will act more strongly and Dow Chemical will appear in court, which the Indian courts have issued summons for Dow Chemical in a criminal case, and they will appear in court and take responsibility for the cleanup and relief and rehabilitation.
Okay. So what is your plan of action for next 365 days on this global solidarity fast?
So I think that when we launched this literally a few days before the anniversary, we've, in spite of a really short period of time, we managed to raise a lot of interest in the campaign. There are a lot of people who are very excited and interested in being a part of it. So our hope is that we'd be able to pass this fast on, have a group of people participate in this every day, and then create a larger volunteer base of people who now know about this disaster and would be able to tell other people about this disaster, and plus create, I think the problem with that the Bhopal campaign itself faces is that people think, and like Paul said very eloquently, it got over 29 years ago. I think it's most important that people every day when they fast say that they're fasting for one person who is suffering even today. And I think that's what we are aiming to achieve and hoping that this 365-day delay will accomplish.
How many volunteers do we already have who are on fast or who are committed to fast in next 365 days, even for one day or 2 days?
I'm going to say about 50-ish.
Yeah, we have a sign-up sheet, and go ahead, Pooja.
No, I just said that I think it was about, as of now, we have about 50 volunteers who,
50.
I believe, and I think it's just been a little over a week of having to put this out there.
So, Paul, you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, sure. So when the first day of the fast, we had 4 people fasting. And so we are trying to maintain an average of 3 to 4 people every day. So initially our goal was to have 365 people who will fast for one day of each day throughout the year and in an unbroken relay fast. And the people and this is also a global fast. So we work closely with groups in the UK like Bhopal Medical Appeal, and they have also expressed interest in participating in this. So, and we want to extend it to other countries. Bhopal has a lot of name recognition and supporters all around the world. And so we want to draw in at least 365 people. But after we started the fast, there was so much interest that we had multiple people fasting each day. And even now we have a lot of like around 50 people, like Pooja said, sign up, and we on the Facebook page in around 3-4 days we had 200 likes on the Facebook page. So there's some momentum building up, and the technicalities of the fast is that one person will fast, at least one person will fast each day and upload their picture with a message. And right now, given the way things are going, we are having multiple people fasting on each day. And they have people who are, so Shashank Shukla, one of the main persons at Harvard who was initially involved with the campaign, he has worked with the Supreme Court of India on the homeless issue and so on. He has actually committed to fast every Tuesday for the whole year. So people are very, committed in seeing this through, and I think more and more volunteers are joining. And for example, when I fast, I put out the picture and I send it out to my friends and family and invite other people to join the Solidarity Fast. We have one well-known activist in the U.S. Even Americans, already some Canadians have fasted. There's an American activist, Diane Wilson, who has even offered to go on an indefinite fast. Because people have been connected with the campaign, just feel the sense that really things have come to a head and there needs to be drastic outpouring of public opinion on this issue. And the fast is one way to bring in all these people and provide a voice to amplify the voices of the survivors.
And just to segue from that, because Paul brought up the great point of Diane Wilson, I think she's an amazing activist who's worked in Seadrift, Texas, with the fishermen's community. In fact, her motivation, she said to be, she's been a supporter of Bhopal for a very long time, but her motivation was that there's a Union Carbide / Dow plant in Seadrift where she lives. So companies like this, they're poisoning not just communities, several miles away in India. It's happening in the U.S. A challenge that we face is that people think that Bhopal is an Indian problem. It's not. It's a global problem. People in any community living around any form of factory, chemical, pesticide, oil rigs, they have this problem on an everyday basis. This is what, yes, Bhopal is our core issue, but then it means so much more than that. Really, the significance of a victory for this campaign is a victory for a lot more people. Really,
True. So, with this fast, apart from, bringing more awareness about this Bhopal gas tragedy, are you guys have any particular demand, or are you expecting any particular action item from either government or court of law? Are you trying to approach anyone on this, either in court of law or government, and trying to get a logical conclusion out of it, more on the awareness?
Yes, so let me take a crack at that. So there's 3 main demands that we are making, and these are in consultation with the survivors, and these have been long-standing demands. And we are making this demand both to the Indian government primarily and also to Dow. So the first demand is medical relief and economic rehabilitation of all survivors. And by all survivors, we are referring to the 1989 when there was some compensation paid, which was vastly undercounted the number of people affected. Right now, the estimate people suffering from health ailments are around 150,000, and the total number of people affected are around 500,000. So that's the first demand, to provide medical relief and economic rehabilitation to all the survivors. The second demand is cleanup of the toxic site and the surrounding areas. As I mentioned before, the site is extremely problematic. It has leached into the groundwater and it needs to be cleaned up as soon as possible. There's people still living around the factory in slums, and that's a very dangerous situation, and that needs to be cleaned up immediately. The third demand is that Dow Chemicals, whose company Union Carbide was responsible, the factory was a site of the worst industrial disaster in the world, has had no accountability process apart from cutting a deal with the Indian government in 1989 without consulting anyone and fleeing to the US. So there's criminal proceedings ongoing in Indian courts, and we would like to see Dow Chemicals prosecuted more strongly, and the government has been taking steps on that because of pressure from survivors. But those are the three main demands. One is medical relief and economic rehabilitation, cleanup of the site, and prosecution of the polluter Dow Chemical.
Okay. So if anyone wants to join, how they can contact you or how they can approach you? If anyone wants to join in this fast and if they want to, contribute as much as they can or as little as they can, how they can reach out to you?
You can find us we have a Facebook page that is up and running. So that would be a great place to start because it has the form and that's the place where you can sign up. Additionally, they can also visit the website www.studentsforbhopal.org or www.icjb.org, and there's a link over there which will lay out exactly how they can be a part of this protest.
Okay, so what is this Facebook page? Just can you tell it so that the listeners can search it?
Oh yeah, it's called the Global Solidarity Fast for Bhopal.
Okay, so if we search for Global Solidarity Fast for Bhopal,
yeah.
So we'll be getting that Facebook page and everything. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
and if you want the address, it's www.facebook.com/fast for Bhopal.
Oh, okay. So, I'm pretty sure most of our listeners are really are really actively engaged in social activities. So, if anyone interested, they would definitely reach you at www.studentsforbhopal.org or through facebook.com/fast for Bhopal. And this is really highly commendable work that you people are doing. We rarely hear about this much of an activism or, fasting really fast for 365 days is just unimaginable. And we really appreciate for taking this up. And I hope either Indian government or Court of Law or Dow Chemicals, they will listen to us and provide the much needed